Hi, and welcome to Studio SN. My name is Sara Naumann, and today I'm really excited to share with you a stamped card that I created for the Winter 2014 issue of Bella Crafts Quarterly magazine. Today we're going to play with Eclectica stamping, partial embossing, and washi tape to create a card layout that is clean and simple but has a lot of mixed media fun. When you get done watching today's video, I hope you get a chance to stop on by bellacraftsquarterly.com and you can sign up for their free quarterly magazine. In the meantime, enjoy the show. The card I designed for Bella Crafts Quarterly is one I like to think of as minimalist mixed media. And I know it maybe sounds a little strange since we often think of mixed media as being really heavily layered, lots of texture, lots of color. But I think it is also possible to create really clean and simple designs incorporating mixed media techniques. Because mixed media, after all, is just about combining different types of media or different types of materials. So for example, on this card, we have combined paint and we've got paper, we've got ink. It's also about mixing textures like the matte of the cardstock, the slick texture of the washi tape, the ribbon or the fabric, if you will, as well as the dimension of heat embossing. So a couple of tricks. First, when you're going with a minimalist design, you can feel free to really embrace the idea of white space. And white space are those empty areas on your surface. And sometimes we feel like we need to fill every inch of our paper, but that's not necessarily true. So you can really embrace the white space in here. It also helps to choose a focal. So for example, here I've got a stamped quote, and this is really the first thing that your eye goes to when you're looking at this card. So that's the focal of the card. And the third technique is to use repetition in your design. So I've repeated elements like the washi tape is here, and also the stamped circles here and down here. And even the paint spatters on my background are echoing the spatters on my card focal, as well as these bigger circles here as well. So all of these design tricks result in a really simple, easy design with lots of mixed media fun. So why don't we get started and I'll show you how I put this card together. First, I'm going to bring in a piece of white cardstock, and this is going to be the background of my card. Now I also want to put just a piece of white scrap paper underneath here too, because I'm going to do some painting. And the paint that I'm working with is from PaperArtsy. This is their Fresco Finish chalk acrylics. And this is in Spanish mulberry. And this is a really beautiful color. As you can see, it's opaque. You can tell that little tiny word on there that says opaque. This is in contrast to a translucent or a semi-translucent paint coverage. So the opaque is going to be highly opaque. It's highly pigmented, and it's a really beautiful, rich color. And what I want to do is brayer a border going across the center of my white cardstock. So I'm going to use a little plastic palette. This is the plastic lid of a coffee canister, and I'm just going to squeeze in a little bit of my Spanish mulberry. You can see that beautiful color there. And I'm going to grab my brayer. So this is a little mini brayer. This is from Ranger, and this is going to be my applicator. So I just need to get my paint loaded up onto my brayer, make sure that it's going all the way around. I don't have any big bald spots on my brayer. And then I'm just simply going to run this across once. So I'm getting a lot of coverage on here. I don't want to have a really opaque border going across here. If I did, I would go back again, of course, but one time is going to be just enough for me. And then I can go ahead and add some additional color on here. And so the next thing I'm going to do is edge my paper, and I'm going to use a very technical tool here, which is my finger. Just going to tap this in and go ahead and edge all four sides of my cardstock using my finger as my applicator. Just getting it on the front. It does not need to be perfect. Part of mixed media fun, of course, is that you can have a little bit more forgiveness. Nothing needs to be perfect. Okay, so I've got this going around on all four sides. Now I want to add my paint spatters on here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and add some water, just a few spritzes of water into my paint. And I'm going to apply it with a stipple brush. And this is one from Faber-Castell. It goes with their gelatos, but I use it for lots of other things. Just tap this in here and get it nicely loaded up. and then spatter this. Now again, I don't want it completely covering the entire piece. I just want some random spatters. Start with a light touch because you can of course always add more. And then what I'm going to do is pop this up onto another jar or something that can keep the edges up off of the surface. And then I just need to let this set aside to dry. Now that my paint is all dry, I can go ahead and add my stamping and my heat embossing. And the stamp set that I'm working with is one from PaperArtsy, and this is the Eclectica line. This is ESN10, and I'm going to start with this big, beautiful script stamp on here. So I've got my stamp mounted up onto my acrylic block. So it's a red rubber stamp, but it's cling, so you can just pop it down onto your block. And I'm going to go ahead and stamp a border going along this side using the baby blue ink. So I'm just going to turn this over and ink this up. It's going to be a really nice pale blue, and that's going to give us a little bit of texture without competing too much with the other elements on the card. So I'm just going to go ahead and stamp this over here, going right over the paint. And then I'll lift that off, and I think you can see the texture on there. It just adds a little something extra, I think. And then let's go ahead and start on the washi tape as well, because I'm going to go ahead and build up some more layers there. Now I'm working with three different washi tape patterns, so I have a really pretty stripe. I have a nice solid narrow purple, and then I have this black and white dot, which I think you can't really see the dot while it's on the roll, but you'll see it when I peel it off. So these three designs, and I'm going to put them across the border and then up here at the top as well. So let me start up here in the top corner. And if you've never used washi tape before, it's a little bit addicting, I have to say. You can just tear off a little strip like this, and then go ahead and add this to the card. And then I'm going to bring in some of the stripe, just tear it off. It's kind of like masking tape. It's really kind of a low tack tape. So if you press it down and then you think, ooh, I actually want to move that, you can still lift it off without tearing your paper, and then you can reapply it if you need to. And then just sort of burnish it down when you're done. And wrap it around the edge there, or you could trim it even with the edge of the card, whichever works for you. And then I'll put a little bit of this dot down here, and then I think you can see a bit better the dotted pattern on there. Can you see that where it's a dot? Maybe still a little bit tiny, but trust me, it is on there. Well, I'm going to take it and go across the center here too, just to create a balance so that I'm doing opposite sides. This time it's going to be a little bit longer. And then put this down. And again, using the same order, so it was dot, stripe, solid. You could mix that up if you wanted to. Pull this off, again, tearing it, and then placing it down on here. And then I'm going to have my solid piece going across, like so. Again, we're mixing media, so we're mixing patterns and textures. So again, I'm just going to wrap this around the back or trim it off, whichever way I want to go. And then I can start my stamping and embossing. So you can see I've got paint, I've got stamping, I've got the washi tape. Why not add another layer? So let me come back in with some circles. And this is the stamp design that I'm going to use, this big, pretty circular design here. And before I start embossing, I'm just going to bring in a piece of scrap paper that's been folded, and this is going to be the funnel to get my embossing powder back into the jar so nothing goes to waste. Now you can either stamp with an embossing ink, you can also stamp with a pigment ink. And I'm going to use a pigment ink pad. This is Colorbox Crafters, and this is in Spiced Plum. And Spiced Plum is going to be a really nice coordinating color with that beautiful Spanish mulberry. And when I put my embossing powder on top, some of that color will still show. And I'm using the Wow embossing powder. This is Gold Satin Pearl Regular, so really pretty yellowy gold. So I'm going to go ahead and ink up my open circles, like so. And then simply, let's see how I had that one down here. And then ink it up again. And we'll pop one up here as well. Now, pigment ink is a slow drying ink, so it does give me some time, but I still want to work fairly quickly. Still have some time to sprinkle the embossing powder on here. Now, I didn't really get it super well covered. I left some areas open on here, and that's so that I could get a really nice kind of tonal effect with that embossing powder. And then once I've got that on here, you can see how some of it is that beautiful spiced plum and more of it is the gold. I'll go ahead and heat set this and then come back for the next round. Now that I've got my circle design all heat embossed, I'm pretty much done with my background, but I wanted to show it to you first. And just as I'm tilting this, I think you can see the shine of the embossing powder on there, as well as how some of it is not really embossed, but it allows that beautiful spiced plum color of the ink pad to show through on there too, which I think is a really nice kind of added technique. Now you probably also notice that some of the embossing is on the washi tape. And yes, you can do heat embossing on washi tape, but you do want to make sure when you're actually heating it that you don't overheat it, because then the tape can start to sort of warp and buckle. So if you notice that, either move your embossing gun or turn it off completely, let the tape cool down and then smooth it down and you're really all set to go. So then the next thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of green ribbon that's going to go right across the front panel of this, and then just wrap the edges around the back and mount it up onto blue cardstock. So let me bring in my original card, and you can see this very narrow silk green ribbon that's just been wrapped around here. And then this piece has been mounted up onto blue cardstock. And then we can start working on the card focal on here. So the card focal is just a little piece of white cardstock. And again, I'm going to put some scrap paper underneath so that I can do my stamping here. And again, I'm going to bring back in my baby blue ink as well as the script stamp here. Still have that mounted up. And again, I'm just going to ink this up with the baby blue. And then I'm going to go ahead and stamp it off the side here, which is why I have my scrap paper down. So again, just press that down here and lift, and you can see I've got some nice subtle coverage on here. I think it may be quite faint to see, but hopefully you can get the gist of that. Now over on the other side here, I'm going to use this little corrugated piece of, it's actually corrugated cardboard that's been turned into a stamp. So this really pretty texture design down here. And I have that mounted up onto a block as well. Same thing with the baby blue. Just go ahead and ink that up. And then I'm going to place this at an angle going off the bottom corner like so. So I have a border, and then I have this really fun corner treatment on here. And then I can go ahead and stamp my focal. And the focal is this really nice quote on here, "Hope is a waking dream," from Aristotle. And I'm going to do the same heat embossing technique as before. So I need my embossing powder, and I also want to have my spiced plum pigment ink. And then of course I have my stamp. So go ahead and get this all ready so I can work quickly. And I'm just inking up my stamp with that spiced plum. And then go ahead and stamp it right in the center. And let me open up my scrap paper here. Again, sprinkle it pretty thoroughly this time with my gold embossing powder. Tap that off, and then I can go ahead and heat set this as well. Now the last part of my card focal, once I have this all heat embossed, I just want to add a little bit of extra dimension around the edges. But first I want to just move this a little bit so that you can see the shine on here on that stamped focal. I think looks really pretty. So what I want to do is echo some of that with some really pretty edging on here. So again, I'm going to bring back in my spiced plum, and I'm also going to bring back in my gold satin pearl embossing powder. And let me just open up my scrap paper here, and I'm going to go around all four sides of my stamped focal using this ink, holding it right in the center, so it really does help to do the embossing on your focal before you do this part. And then I'm going to go ahead and just sprinkle some of this embossing powder here in the center of my piece of scrap paper, and then I can kind of dip this in so that I'm able to get some really nice dimension on here. So I think you can see with that really pretty gold going around the edges there, that then I can go ahead and heat emboss this, and I will have a beautiful card focal ready to go. So let me set aside this, and I'm going to bring back in my original card here, and we can take a look at how it's all been assembled. So you can see, I think, the gold edging around here. This has then been matted up onto blue cardstock, and then I adhered this to the front panel of my background with foam tape, so it has a little bit more dimension. Now this green ribbon that goes across here is a green and very narrow satin ribbon, and that's just been wrapped around. This knotted piece of ribbon, this is a different, slightly wider ribbon. This is grosgrain. So I just tied a bit of it into a knot and then used some glue to adhere it here so that it's overlapping between the focal and the background. And then I simply put this up onto the front of my blank white card, and we are ready to go. So this is how you can use mixed media techniques to create a look that's clean and simple. I'd like to thank Anne, Lisa, and Teresa at Bella Crafts Quarterly for inviting me to be a part of the Winter 2014 issue. Thank you guys. And when you get a chance, I hope you can stop by the BellaCraftsQuarterly.com website and download the magazine. It's always free, it's packed with fun projects, and I think you will really enjoy it. I hope you liked today's show. For more ideas and inspiration, please do stop by my website at saranaumann.com. If you enjoyed today's video, I invite you to subscribe to Studio SN on YouTube, and I'll keep you updated with a new video every Wednesday. Thank you for joining me on Studio SN, and I'll see you again next time.